So, welcome back, everyone. This is episode 9 of our iPet Goat 2 series and the deciphering of the symbolism therein. And I'm joined again by Armunn. How are you doing, Armunn?
Yeah, all good here. I hope you too.
Yeah, very, very good. Yeah. So, let's crack on with it, I guess.
Another 5 seconds.
Another 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's the part. Just rewind a little bit there. After the character looks away, around that, yes, he looks away, and here, so from, let's just get there. And I maintain my position, and this was basically to say, so he is basically exhausted of the, let's call it TV demon, for lack of a better term, and all basically the nightmares that he had been living in those, in the belief of those narratives, right? And then when he looks away, so he is absolutely tired, and when he looks away, his salvation, quote unquote, comes from, okay, the stars, the universe, in between rectangles that would look the same format as screens, right? That brings this Christ figure into a birth. And so, again, I think and maintain my position that this Christ figure symbolizes AI. And so, this is the moment AI is deployed to finally, end up all the narratives. And of course, this will be the script. It won't end anything. It will maintain it. But I'm reading it as a script. And so this is the moment that the Savior is finally brought into the world. And it is brought, as you can see, through the screen, right? It's through these rectangles, which have the format. Okay, you could be TVs, or even, the smartphone has more or less the same format if you put it sideways. But it comes from the screen after having absorbed all the narratives to finally regulate and save everyone from these quote unquote demons, which are merely believed smoke and mirrors. So, yeah, I think, you might call me a stubborn guy here with this, but at every scene, this is what I see. This is what I think is being depicted here. This savior, whether it will be presented as AI itself, or saying that, the essence of Christ incorporated, or, sort of possessed the AI, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, whatever way they want to paint it. But I think that this will be part of the plot being deployed here.
Well, that is a very interesting reason. I never looked at it like that as well. It's almost like what you state, this sort of TV demon, this demiurgic character, that it's almost akin to the old system losing its spark, its imagination. And so, in that sense, there's a sort of telecommunicative upgrade that they have with AI itself. That's very, very
Yeah,
interesting.
although in the script being presented here, the AI is not an upgrade, right? In the script presented here, the AI is the savior from the TV demon, right? Of course, the AI is, a continuation. It's an upgrade of the TV demon in actual sense, because, it can, um, directly influence far more efficiently than the TV demon ever could, right? But of course, it will be presented as a savior, as a heightened consciousness, whatever you want to call it. So again, two different readings. One is the narrative that is implied, and another one is the narrative as seen from outside. So I wanted to make that distinction.
Very interesting, and it's quite synchronistic because this sort of Ludovic character, this Orphic Egg character, um, I was trying to do a video last night on the hantavirus. I've got enough notes on it, but I started recording it, and I was thinking this is just so utterly insane. I've already covered this. I feel like it's like Groundhog Day. I feel like I've covered the same exact talking points that I have in the notes regarding the Diamond Princess with the whole Corona
Hmm.
escapade, and I just thought to myself, oh my god, please, I just hope this doesn't take off as a narrative, because basically we're going to be living on repeat. And interestingly, synchronistically, it's almost firstly, I'm like this sort of egg character. I've just given up.
Yeah.
I've had enough of the narratives, and of course the TV demon is this sort of tired old system that is just entirely unimaginative. So it's interesting that you bring up that point, um, because I actually see something like that. Probably, I say likely, it's more than likely to occur, because as you're seeing with the mainstream, it really doesn't have its finger on the pulse anymore of the zeitgeist. It doesn't really have control of the reins anymore. Its narratives, its stories, they don't feel believable anymore. I
Yeah,
mean,
but
mhm.
sorry.
No, jump in.
But I think that it's like the since you're talking about reins, they don't have the reins in their hands anymore. I think that the writer released the reins on purpose because the idea is to cause a, let's call it. I know it sounds like an antithesis, but it's to cause a sort of controlled bit of chaos. The idea, the sensation that, for example, people are finding out what is going on, that people are looking through the fakery. Most of the people that recently and only recently have been given the breadcrumbs to discover, these narratives are doing so validating always the core principles of the worldview, which means that all that they need is an alternative. And don't worry, alternatives are in the pocket, right? So to really, the function of what I'm trying to do by seeing the narratives is so that the narratives, be it this or an alternative, never have that emotional engagement anymore, right? But what is happening now is a bit of a release so that people see the old world as the demon. They see the TV as the demon, but all they really need is an alternative because they haven't let go of all the core foundational beliefs that make up the worldview. So I think this is very important, a very important distinction to make in this regard. Sorry.
No, I totally agree. There was a comment that I had recently. I think it was on the video that I did, Mirror Mirror on the Wall, that alternative reality game
Mm.
with the White House Correspondents' Dinner, that whole fiasco. And by the way, I had to force myself to make that video as well, because I mean, honestly, these narratives are an insult to people's intelligences, even to go through them. It's just so utterly ludicrous. Every piece of evidence that is provided to sort of prop up even the story, not just the narrative, but the story itself, meaning from the sequence from A to B, without any
Mm.
of the sort of narrative linings, the emotionality surrounding it all. It's completely ludicrous. But some individual asked me, he said, I'm feeling increasingly isolated, depressed, and alone, knowing all this stuff. I'm unable to connect with most people anymore, and feeling like I have any plan or idea of what to do. It's enough to send one insane. And I realized at that point with that comment, ultimately what you're discussing is something I've been slowly getting towards, which is these narratives, these media events, even the content creation engine itself. And of course, people continue to create content because they either want validation, social clout, or of course, some of them as well are heavily financially invested in these enterprises. Is they are continuing to perpetuate what I call narrative sink,
Yeah.
which is that you're sinking engagement into it, even if you're critiquing it.
Correct. Correct. Remember what I said about if you fight it, you validate it, right? So the critique of something in any other way um, than presenting it as merely a story, because only if you present it as merely a story will it go out in smoke like a ghost, right? You have this huge monster in front of you and it looks really scary, and then you understand it's made of smoke, and then you blow and the smoke dissipates, and oh, it was just you know a smoke figure, nothing more, right? So anything that presents the monster as real, even if it says, no, no, this is a lie, but behind this, there's this other thing, and that's why a bit, why I um, disagree with, and if you allow my criticism, disagree with your recent videos about the plasma beings and so on and so forth, because that is adding to it. And that is contributing, like you say, contributing to the fear factor, which is exactly what is intended. Of, if this is not you know, oh, there's a script, but who's behind the script? It's demons, it's plasma beings, it's, I don't know, aliens, or it's, ancient dinosaur, soothsayers or whatever, and that is adding to it. That is putting a boogeyman where there's only smoke, and behind the curtain is an old man, like the Wizard of Oz. When I say an old man, of course, it's figuratively speaking, but it doesn't have the power that people invest in it. And moreover, I would say that we, at this moment, and when I say we as MSM, uh, the other side, the alternative MSM, which is MSM plus, those who in any way believe in the foundations are writing history, because one day that will be in the history books. In the same way that now you read, like, oh, in ancient Greece there were the Stoics, for example, or there were the philosophers, and these were currents that made into history. Who wrote them? Do you think it was all written by a script writer team out of the blue? No, they wrote them based upon the input that they got from people living in those blueprint cycles, right? So the same will happen here, which is the contributions of those content creators right now that you're seeing, us included, for good or bad, us included, will be included in the history books, certainly skewed, certainly put into pigeonholes of, a catalog kind of thing. But we will be there because we are contributing to the history, unless, and that is the only unless, right? Unless we show it to be mere fakery, and promote that people live their internal lives first, and then of course their external lives. And this commenter that you mentioned, he is feeling depressed, isolated, and so on. That is exactly the purpose. But if he sees the story as merely a story, that there is no monster, there is no monster in the TV. There's merely a troupe of actors, like we saw in Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. It's all that. It's a troupe of actors. They don't die. They don't get hurt. Nobody dies or get hurt, to use that term, that phrase that has been circulating a lot, right? It's just a stage play that we pay for it, just like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern paid with their gold coins, right? And their attention and their participation and their interaction. They participated in the play. They played a role, even if they didn't know the script. They played within. They went along with it, right? So what we need to see is, okay, there's no monster in the TV. There's no monster outside of the TV either. All that there is, call it nature, call it world, reality, life, whatever, that has pleasant things, unpleasant things, and we are in it as contributors, right? Now, how do we contribute? With fear, right? Or do we contribute with life? That is the choice, in front of all of us. So I would suggest that commenter, if possible, to understand that these stories lead absolutely nowhere. And the only reason to see them is to exactly understand that there's nothing to fear there.
Yes, I also stated as well the reasoning for these narratives and stories. These, I mean, what fundamentally are ARGs now. I'm starting to see them as basically alternative reality games,
Right.
which is that they're seeking either, there's two ways to describe it: epistemic islanding or cognitive exile, which is that they want you to become fatigued and almost estranged existentially, due to this sort of incessant siege state mentality, right? That the whole world is against you, that you are. It even invokes a sort of a certain tepid elitism in oneself, right? That one is almost detached from the world, right? Again, this is all planned. And then I also mentioned as well something I've been sort of rummaging around in my mind. I'm sort of trying to figure out these neologisms so I can describe what I'm trying to what I'm contemplating. And I stated that content and digital technology are designed to bring these self-referential traps about, where terminal discernment kicks in. The idea that endless discernment eventually consumes one's own ability to live normally.
Yes.
And pretty much that's it. That's exactly what these things are designed to do. It's not necessarily that we live on the fringes and therefore, we become an island in and of ourselves.
No.
But it's the fact, even if this became the majority, meaning the questioning of the system became the majority, which it slowly is, funnily enough, there's still that complete and utter disarray psychologically, because ultimately it's like the chariot. If you have grown up believing, you have a name, you live in a neighborhood, you have managers, the stable masters, you've grown up thinking you are a horse, a beast of burden,
Of course.
and then of course you have no reins around yourself. So are we to go back to the wild? Or do we even have that in us anymore? And so it creates this profound sense of alienation, which is what it's designed to do.
Yeah, and it's not to go back to the wild, and it's not that technological society doesn't have a healthy place. I mean, we as human beings will always inevitably build technology. One way or another, we'll build technology. And all technologies have a healthy place. All technologies came up from an idea to improve something about the experience here, the interaction with the world. Whether it's protection from the elements or better communication or whatever it is, it has a healthy place. So it's not to go Hamish or anything like that and live in a farm for the rest of your days without even evading all types of technology. It's not like that. It's you are in it, be in it, but that doesn't mean that it controls you, right? If you are driving a car, you are driving a car. It's not the car driving you. It's not a self-driving Tesla or whatever new models that they bring up with that thing, right? You drive the car, right? It's not to avoid cars altogether. Car is a technology, right? And it helps. It helps a lot, to go to places that probably you wouldn't go otherwise. and see things from other perspectives, from other sides of the world, and so on, is fine. But you drive the car, right? Don't be trapped in the uh, like that Pink Floyd song of I've become comfortably numb,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
No.
It's don't become comfortably numb. Don't become comfortably numb. Use the technology. Don't run away from it. You are in a society with a certain degree of available technology. Use it, but use it. You use it. You use it with applying your own volition, your own agency, your own will, not living someone else's stories, be them, pleasant, hopeful stories or fearful, dark, nightmares. No, live your own story and write it as well. Because as we live, we are writing the story, as we go along. I don't believe that there's anything pre-written. I don't think that, all prophecies are scripts. All prophecies are scripts. We can bring a prophecy to fruition, to manifestation, but not because it was prophesized, but because we were convinced that it was prophesized, right? Because it is being written right now. But I don't think anything is pre-written, right? So if nothing is pre-written, that tells you that even if your past has a lot of, fears and this and tensions and stress, it doesn't mean that it has to continue in the future. Because one decision from you now can change the whole perspective of the present and of the future that is yet to be written. Let's say that is yet to come. Nothing is written. Sorry about that, Ran. Go on.
No, I think you're correct, and it's rather synchronistic. We sort of stumbled upon this scene firstly, um, because yeah, these narratives are just they're so mediocre, they're so unimaginative, and the more you look at these things, see the whole titillation of the search for me has been taken away because I can see that these things are so easily placed. So, for example, I mean, with the hantavirus thing, right? You have April the 1st, it sailed, right? Supposedly, that was around about the time that he got this disease or whatever, right? By the way, the guy who died, his name's Leo, right?
Mm.
And so you have the lion, and it's also related to the sun. So you've got the dead sun being carried on the Hondius, which comes from a Dutch word meaning the hound or the dog. It's named after an individual. What was his name? I forget his first name, but it translates as Lord of. So
And also boats were funerary in certain cultures. So go on.
exactly, yes, yes.
Mhm.
And his wife was Miriam. So you have the bitter sea. So you've got
Mhm.
the dead sun being mourned by the bitter sea or the fallen Sophia, being carried on the boat known as the Hondius, named after a map maker who was also sort of good friends with Mercator. His name itself translates as Lord of the Hounds, so that would relate to either Arcturus or, of course, a more direct meaning would be that of Sirius. And he goes to Cape Verde, the Cabo Verde, the
Mhm.
Green Cape, which has 10 islands, like the 10 Sephira, and now they're going to Tenerife. And Tenerife,
Mhm.
interestingly, there's Mount Teide, I believe it's called, or Teide. It is, I believe it means the White Mountain in the Guacha. I'm probably butchering that word in native language. And the belief is underneath that white capped mountain was hell, right? So I mean, you've got all of these, and of course he came from Argentina, which in Latin is Argentum,
Mhm.
which relates to silver,
The
and that
silver, yeah.
relates to the moon. So I mean, all of these things, they're so utterly
And
stupid.
the flag of Argentina has a sun prominent
Exactly,
in the
yeah.
center.
Exactly. So
Yes.
you've got this duality, and of course you've got Jake Rosemarine as well. Rose is the either rose as in the rose itself, or rose as in the Latin dew. So the morning dew. So potentially where Rosicrucian comes from as well, right? The cross of the morning dew, or the dawn's dew, and Marine, which is the same as Miriam, the bitter sea. So I mean, these things are just so utterly banal. I mean, it literally took me 10 minutes of just looking at it, and I'm like, all right, there you go. That's They don't even hide it anymore. It's because they keep reusing the same names, the same esoteric tropes. The same. I mean, it's just so
Yes, because
utterly banal.
listen, if you and this is no really honestly no disrespect intended, but I'm being objective here. If you're writing a series of books for children, you're going to do that. You're going to reuse what works because you're talking with a level of let's say intellectual availability that is lesser than if you were writing for adults, and also because children have high imagination. So if you write something that doesn't really make sense in the story, they will fill it in. They will contribute themselves to that story and find a way for it to fit, right? So with this, I want to say that uh, the MSM believers, MSM followers, and the alternative MSM, which is what is usually called conspiracy theories, or alt media, or truther, or that kind of thing, they are still within the same paradigm. The difference is they see the story as a dark story. So, for example, um, what the MSM would see as a rom com, the alternative MSM would see as a horror movie.
It's effectively fan fiction, isn't it?
Fanfic, but
It's fan
yes,
fiction of a
and that is why I
storyline.
tell you that we are historians. We are writing history. And when I say we, is as a general we, right? We are writing history by our contributions. Because, even in, I think it was in the past episode or some other conversation, I can't recall, we talked about how Bill Cooper was one of the grandfathers of alt media conspiracy theories kind of thing, right? And this is not to say, of course, I think otherwise. But let us imagine for a second that Bill Cooper wasn't, placed there for that end. That he was, a genuine guy that found stuff up and, was taken aback by what he found and, connected the dots and all of that. He basically contributed heavily to a movement that followed decades after his death, right? And the same thing can happen and will happen with other people. Not all content creators are placed there. People like to call, oh, he's a shill, the other one is a shill, the other one. They don't need to be. They don't need to be. They are either very smart in the sense of, economically smart to find where the gold is, right? Where the economic gold is, or they're just really believers in the dots that they connected. That's why, the other day I've made a comment which was, when it relates to the world stage, um, don't imagine, see, don't connect the dots, expose them, and don't add, subtract, right? So if you follow these three principles, the smoke of the ghost will dissipate, right? Because the smoke of the ghost implies that you use your imagination, right? And I mean, you're going through the haunted house in the fair, in those fairgrounds or whatever it's called. Um, and as you go in, that they will fool you. You know that they will pretend that it's a horror house, but it's all, people just jumping around with a chainsaw or whatever it is, right? Um, And as you go through it, if you maintain that, center of, I know that I am in, a fictional house of horrors, that nothing here will actually hurt me. You know, it is not built to hurt me. It's built to scare me. And I paid for it, right? I paid the ticket at the entrance, right? So as I go through it, I observe instead of imagining. Oh, there's a figure there. Maybe it's a ghost. Maybe it's the headless knight or something like that. You're filling in. No, just observe and see. Oh, it's a prop. It's an actor in, a costume or something, right? So you see instead of imagining. And then don't add, subtract, because you see a figure and you start adding. Oh, could it be a spider? It looks like a spider, or it looks like a goblin, or no, don't add, subtract.
Weaponized apophenia, yeah.
Right, subtract. And the other one is to oh, what was the other one I said? Jeez.
I think you ended with subtract, did you not? You ended with
Yes,
that.
but there was another one. Sorry. Ugh, I just said it before. Because now I lost my train of thought. Sorry, go ahead. It'll come back to me. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to mention as well regarding Bill Cooper. Remember, he was martyred as well. So
Yeah.
of course, the idea of sacrifice or blood sacrifice is the greatest electrical charge that you can provide to that movement.
Sorry, I just remembered. Sorry,
Yeah, jump
before
in.
I forget again. It's don't connect the dots, expose them.
Oh yeah, yes.
Because the idea there is, okay, you see one hint, two hints, and you're supposed to, with your imagination, connect one to the other and come up with it with your conclusion on it, right? But if you're seeing a script in the same way that you're seeing a magic trick, don't connect the dots, just
Exactly.
expose them yourself. It doesn't mean that you're exposed to everyone else, but expose them yourself. Sorry,
Because otherwise you follow the breadcrumbs all the way to
you
of course
follow,
the house. Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting because William
Bill
Cooper,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so he died as a martyr. He almost injected that electricity into the movement, which is continued on to this day. There's a really interesting book I came across. In fact, it's a sort of mainstream book, but it's interesting some of the things that he mentions. He sort of takes a more critical view of William Cooper, and it's called William Cooper: The Rise of Conspiracy and the Fall of Trust in America. And he almost, if I recall the book correctly, he almost makes out as though this was just a sort of natural outburst of distrust against the government and all of this. Perhaps, like what you stated, perhaps 10 minutes ago or so, that this is designed. They want to let go of the reins of the steeds. They want the world to descend into chaos because it's temporary, it's engineered, and it's controllable, and it allows them to, again. There's like the allegory of the haunted house or what have you. There is no potential that the individuals going into that ride, into that amusement, are going to be hurt in any sort of way, at least not on a large scale or broad sort of way. It's all designed again to elicit psychological control, which is the heart of government. And what's interesting about Bill Cooper is, of course, he was in the military. So that's another thing we have to point out, because this is something you see throughout all of these various events. There's a sort of incestuous relationship between the military, or of course, in the case of the hantavirus, Jake Rosemarin, his husband is he's a lawyer. He's part of a big law firm in New York, if I recall, and they are sort of embedded with BlackRock. And then you've got, of course, his sister, who is a major viral and crisis management sort of director or what have you. So you've
Yes,
got
and
this sort of
there's
incestuous
always
relationship.
media witnesses too.
Yes. Well, that's something else we have to bring up with that, which is you have Rui Chinet, who, by the way, I follow him. He's a travel blogger. I watch a few of his videos here and there every once in a while. He's from Turkey. I mean, his channel is huge. I forget how many millions of subscribers he's got. So you had him. You had another one from Arabia. He's a big travel blogger in the Middle East, and I think he's based out of Dubai, if I recall correctly. Anyway, you had him as well. And again, this is a polar expedition, effectively. So why in the hell would they be there? It makes no sense. There was only 148 passengers on the ship, I believe, at any one time. So it was a fairly small gathering, and it costs about $10,000 to get on the ship to begin with. So these people are fairly well to do, and you could say it's a closed set, right? It's almost
It's
like pirate radio.
it became the Hantanic.
Exactly. Oh, that's great. That's great. So, it's just
You're here. There's nothing I fear.
just on that. Did you see the Jake Rosemarine thing? Oh my god. He's like, this is real. We're not just headlines. This is real, guys. This is.
Yes.
He said it like 3 times, of course, reading from his script. And I just look. I actually, I'm not joking, you man. I put my head and I put my hands, and pardon me. I basically face palmed myself, right? And I went, oh my god! I
I mean,
just shook my
because
head in
Silas,
disbelief.
if you just been through a real tough situation, the first thing that you emphasize when telling your friend is, this was real, man. This was real. I'm not kidding. This is not a headline. It's the first thing, your first preoccupation in your mind is to say that it was real, Otherwise, it's just ridiculous, But of course, it
Oh,
works. It works because, again, of what I stated. It's people have allowed themselves or not themselves, but have allowed their minds to become like a child's mind, right? And
yeah.
when witnessing news, there is no distinction in their minds, in the state of their minds, between witnessing news and witnessing a movie, with the difference that they take the news seriously, right? But emotionally, the involvement of watching news and watching a movie is the same, right? And so those things work because of that. That you just described works because of that.
Well, it's almost as though they've been conditioned for hypersuggestibility, and you can actually
Mhm.
see it within our own Western culture through Hollywood. And we've been conditioned not just for hypersuggestibility, but that's really connected to and synonymous with the need for drama. So
Yeah.
within the play, again, we're playing a role, right? We're rolling the dice, you could say,
Mm.
on the wheel of fortune, right? And people believe, oh, what will I receive from this wheel? Well, the system itself is a closed loop, so it doesn't matter whatever fortune you're going to get. You're always going to be within the wheel, within the loop. You're always going to be at the mercy of it. You'll be at the mercy of the roll. And of course, these people have, like what you're saying, MSM or MSM plus, the sheeple or sheeple 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever mark we're on now. They they have this sort of instinct. It's not instinctive, but it's now ingrained. I think the better term would
Mm.
be, it's now an ingrained faculty, an ingrained functional need for the play and because that is what provides them the sort of vaporous canopy which supports the role, and the role
Yeah.
itself is what they believe they are. So it's again like that scene that you saw where the breaking of the frames, because what
Mhm.
that is basically the narrowing of reality in a symbolic or allegorical way, and you have to break through all of that. And like what you see here, once he becomes completely, it's like eating sweet desserts, right? After the first couple of spoonfuls, or perhaps the first couple of plates, depending on one's appetite,
Yeah.
it feels really good. You get a dopaminergic hit, but then as you become over and over satiated and sort of, um, uh, you know, the greed, or not the greed, but the overindulgence takes over of this dopaminergic sweet sucra of the narrative, or of course of just social media platforms in general. It becomes sickly sweet. You become nauseous. You just want to stop. And I think in a similar way, this is what this is denoting. This scene right here, which is that Ludovic, or this sort of Orphic egg character, that it no longer has any ability. This sort of TV demon, and of course the social media platforms and all of that, the feed, if you will, it has no ability to satiate him anymore, and or to lull him into a sort of somatic sense of being, and so he just breaks free from it. He just no longer needs
Yeah,
it anymore.
you just mentioned, that people need the narrative. I completely agree, in that sense. And when we, some time ago did that recording about the music industry, and we were talking about how some people live through celebrities, right? And they follow celebrities. The reason they do that is because they are lacking in their own inner life. And so they have to live through someone else. The same thing happens here. In this sense, the script is the celebrity, right? And so for anything to happen in their life, it has to be provided by this channel, let's say, this medium of reality building, let's say, right? So nothing is happening. Imagine you're quiet in your town or wherever it is, and through the screen, synchronized, comes the news that war has started, right? But you look around and there's nothing, right? Nothing's going on in your immediate vicinity, in your life, and so on and so forth. But that news just made reality, right? And you love it. You love it because it stirs up your vacant life, right? Because for a person to be attached to this, their inner life must be neglected. You understand what I'm trying to say? So
Oh no, absolutely.
for things to happen, they must be carried externally. Sometimes, people even wish, you know how many comments I've read over the years of people saying, "Oh, I wish that the comet really hits the Earth and cleans this shit up. I really wish that the aliens invade and, you know, um, destroy the governments and so on. I really wish that, yeah, maybe the demons will do better than, the government." So, people wish for these um, conclusions because their life has become vacant, but it's not become vacant organically. It's because of following these narratives and being attached to them, right? So they became like
Connecting
this guy. Yeah, like
connecting
this
the
guy here.
dots.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's and of course the truther movement, or the awakening, the sort of movement for so-called awakening and lucidity. That was the mantra that it would constantly reiterate to people.
Yeah.
Connect the dots, do your own research.
Yes.
Basically, what it's saying to you is research. Basically, search through the dots that I've provided to you, and research it and research it and explore and re-explore it. So it, of course, like any sort of liquid, any viscous liquid, it'll eventually go through the pores of your mind and will
Mhm.
percolate down to
And you will contribute. And you will
exactly.
contribute to it
You'll
because then
feel
you
it.
become a
Mm,
content creator yourself in
exactly.
one way or another, be it online, be it with your group of friends or whatever relations one has, and you add to that story. You add your own verses, let's say, to that epic poem. Go on, sorry.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah. So you almost become complicit in it. It's in yourself, but it makes you feel as though you have reached the sort of destination of understanding
Yeah.
based upon your own of your own. It's of your own volition, right? And again, like what you said regarding the sort of vicariousness of it all, that is what, of course, upholds most things in society. The society in which we live is a theatre of the absurd. It is a society of spectacle. It's totally, and I mean unadulteratedly, una, unabashedly. I mean, I can't use enough adjectives here. Insane. When you look at these various narratives that people believe, be it in the MSM, the MSM Plus, the whatever it may be,
Hmm.
it's totally insane. But of course, it's insane because I think almost human beings, when human beings are brought into a system like a late stage or late modern society in which we abide within, human beings eventually grow bored. So they need these things. These
Hmm.
things are something that are provided to them by the ruling class, the elite, because it provides them some sense of titillation, some sense of, like what you're saying, a sort of temporary relief from the vacancy of it all. Because if people are left vacant, again, like Universe 25 or Calhoun's mouse experiment, if they've got no sort of stimulation within the environment through these narratives and the drama of it all, eventually, like what you see here, they will simply revert back to the sort of primal fire. If you were a sort of hobbying subscriber, you would say they would revert back to the state of nature, right? What's interesting as well, just finally on Bill Cooper, is his name Cooper, sort of tying him with the hantavirus and the ships. Cooper in Middle English was actually it was an old term that referred to like a craftsman, a specific type of craftsman who would repair or make waterproof wooden barrels and casks that would go into ships.
Mm.
So very interesting, sort of creating hermetically sealed, enclosed systems of which is, of course, exactly what the MSM Plus is. Of course,
Yeah.
similar to the MSM. I just found that interesting, something to
Yes,
point
it's
out.
interesting. Well, I didn't bring Cooper because of that, because that was the name that was brought up. But he's not the only one. Cooper, David Icke, that other guy, Jordan Maxwell.
Oh, yeah.
Several of this time were the grandparents, let's say, the ideological, or whatever you want to call them, grandparents, and even one that is alive. That guy, Jim Fetzer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Jim
yeah.
Fetzer. Jim Fetzer. It's not necessary in terms of Bill Cooper. I do think he was placed there, but it's not necessary that all of these that I mentioned were placed there. They could have just been previous followers of the breadcrumbs. They connected the dots. They came up with a story that was coherent, because these nightmares are coherent. You know,
Well,
they are fantasious, but they are coherent, and so they presented and passed them on to other people. Sorry, go ahead.
it's also the incentive structures that surround these things.
Hmm.
So, I mean, there's a multiplicity of them. I mean, the primary one is financial incentives. So, a lot of this really bridges the gap between sci-fi and reality. So again, it's an alternate reality game. It actually injects a greater degree of believability and a suspension of disbelief, as say if you were to just create a sci-fi novel. And interestingly, with the sci-fi novels, and of course prior to that, you had the Renaissance and medieval and ancient dialogue writers. All of it is fundamentally relating back to utopianism, whether we want to believe it or not. So, for example, what Bill Cooper spoke of, what Tessarian, Maxwell, all of them. Ultimately, what they're discussing is that we I mean, this is an implicit statement that they're all making, which is that the system that exists right now doesn't serve us. We need a new system, and we need an awakening, which is very theosophical, one could say. So we need a sort of spiritual lucidity. And, this is why you see the conspiratorial mindset and the narratives. They go into the sort of spirituality as well, right? Because that dimensionality is something that lends itself quite well and quite readily to, of course, the implicit idea that, in fact, the system we abide within is not working for us, which, of course, is true. We need a new system. And of course, when you think like that, once you have become vacant from this system, again, you've got no reins at that point, but you're still an animal who desires reins, who desires controls, who desires the security of it all, right? Even if it's of a modicum of it. And
Yes, but
so,
even
therefore,
sorry.
they will impose a narrative onto that. They will bring you into a psychological state of basically abandonment of the old order, and they will impose upon you the new order through,
Controlled demolition. Yeah,
exactly, controlled
and
demolition.
the when spirituality is involved, and yes, many of these authors that we're talking about involve spirituality one way or another. It is always involved in the sense of, behind these are Satanists, behind these are demons, behind these are, all these fantastic pop culture things. Because even, I mean, even a Satanist, you know, a Satanist implies a certain frame of things that came through pop culture. And pop culture is before TV even, okay? But even the term Satanist, right? What do you define as a Satanist? Is it, someone who wears black? Is it, the Satanist you saw on TV, talk in a show or whatever, an interview show, a talk show? Is it, the Satanists you saw in the newspaper and the news reports about, the supposed killings of this or of that? Is Marilyn Manson a Satanist? No, he's a performer. And so it's so all of these things, when spirituality is involved, is already writing into a certain framework given, like you say, fan fiction, a certain framework that is given to contribute to it and add to the mythos, right? And uh, what really should, in my opinion, be done is, instead of connecting the dots, instead of adding and contributing and writing the history that you so much loathe, because in fact, all of us, the more we know about history, the more we loathe it, right? But we treat it as real. We assume it is reality, right? And so we write, we add to it, and we make it even worse. Like, oh no, remember the Black Plague, epidemics of the past? Oh, they were all demons poisoning the wells, or you add to it, right? It's the same as when we were discussing Lord of the Rings. We say that we add something to it. We say, oh, maybe it was Sauron that influenced this guy to behave that way, right? Even when that isn't written, right? So you add to it, but always within the framework given, right? You don't go out of the framework. You don't say, well, maybe because Tolkien in that particular aspect, missed out. He didn't add that detail. So don't you add it. Don't you add the detail, right? If the author didn't do it, expose the dot, don't connect it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and
And
I think yeah, sorry.
so just to wrap it up, sorry. Let me tell you something. One of the things that I most wish, as your friend, as your true friend, is that you don't become like one of them, that you never become an adder to the story and become instead an exposer of the story. So don't become a Bill Cooper or a Jordan Maxwell. You're more inclined to Jordan Maxwell if it was the case, but don't become a Jordan Maxwell. Become an exposer of Jordan Maxwell's. Become an exposer, not an adder to it. Sorry.
I definitely have reached the point with a lot of these narratives where I've got to be honest, I feel quite deracinated about a lot of them. I've got to be honest, I don't even want to cover a lot of them. It's just so
Then
utterly,
don't.
it's stupid. Yeah. Yeah, I know, I really shouldn't, but it's, I don't know, there's always this niggling feeling, if you don't expose it, there will be someone out there that could have been not necessarily saved, but I don't want to use that terminology, but brought to a
But
certain level
yeah,
of awareness,
but there are two things there. First, if it is exposing, um, exposure is usually, short, direct, straight to the point, right? When you expose a magic trick, you don't need to go through all the symbology of the magic trick and etc. Another thing that you mentioned is, oh, maybe someone could be quote unquote saved. But that is you assuming that there's someone to save. That your contribution will save someone. No, people save themselves. You may, inspire, but if for you to inspire, they have to already have walked half the path at least, right? So, no, in that sense, that is, in my opinion, of course, and this I'm talking, always from my point of view, is there was no one there that you could have saved had you done that video. And I'm not telling you to give it all up. Okay. What I'm saying is, the perspective with which you do things. If people are inspired by the exposure, it's because they have started exposing themselves and they never got a vent that matched. So they might have been thinking, am I the only crazy guy here?
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
am I the only guy that's seeing that this is bullshit? You know, and then you, by providing that, oh, wait a second, there's another guy here, right?
Sort of spark that's derived from the
Right,
numbers of it all. Yeah,
right. But you don't
yeah.
save anyone. No.
No, yes, well, absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, you may be able to, plant a seed of doubt, but that's about it. I've noticed as well. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with what you've stated there regarding the numbers of all. But I think as we go on, let's say even in a 5-year span, I think the system itself is there's going to be a hell of a lot of socio-political changes. And
Sure.
people, a lot of the normative masses are going to, even of course, the sort of partially normative masses within the sort of alt media and MSM plus, they're going to believe that all of this is just either, if it goes the MSM plus way, which is that we get rid of the Satanists or whatever, insert whatever villain
Right.
you desire or whatever identity you want to place onto this faceless villain, this canvas of one's loathing and animosity, then they will believe as though there has been a depressurization of the system, right? Which again, this is all by design. Or of course, if it goes the MSM way, there's the same thing. It's just done in sort of normative terms, right? So really the only thing that's changing is the language. But this depressurization of the system is fundamentally what power is constantly doing, be it on whatever timescale, which is that the earth, or pardon me, the systems of power themselves. Let's not look at the macrocosm, just the microcosm of this. The systems of power themselves intentionally induce auto cannibalization within the system, self-inflict their own ruin, or at least the system's ruin, so that again that creates the lacuna or the negative space, the vacuum from which, of course, they can start recreating things. Because remember,
Yes.
nature abhors a vacuum, but who
Sure.
else abhors a vacuum? Actors. If they don't
Yes.
have any lines to read from the script, or of course cues within the mise en scène of the
Yes.
social environment, then of course they're going to be desirous of something, of a person to provide them that. They're going to be desirous of a shepherd. So therefore, again, this is how the sort of cycles of history occur, the ebbs and flow of history. These are the systems of power. This is how they function. So it will always go towards that. And it's like what you're seeing here, like what we've been saying throughout all of these episodes. The collapse is an illusion, you know. And I
Yes.
think there was a comment or something, I forget now, but the individual stated, he's not a regular to the channel, I don't think. He sounded too normative to be a regular to the channel, but he stated, all of these things are going on. How are you saying this is all an illusion, right? Are people not going to die in these events? Are people? Well, firstly, we don't know. We're merely, the story and narrative itself is mere speculation. So, for example, if the media provides you just with the story, which is this happened from in this sequence from point A to point B, right? Whatever it may
Mhm.
be in terms of the hantavirus, this thing. Someone got it in Argentina. They went to Cabo Verde. Well, pardon me, Saint Helena, Cabo Verde, and now they're off to Tenerife, right? That's what happened. They got it. They died. The wife died. This, that, and they don't embellish it at all with sort of placing their own speculative emotionality in the perfidious and profuse amount of adjectives that they add to, this tragic event, or sadly this has happened, or look at the
It's
absolute.
real. We're not headlines. It's real.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not just headlines. This is real, right? This type of absolute fakery.
Yeah.
Now, in that sort of environment, in that narrative environment, they ultimately, you don't know anything that has went on there, even with the story, even with, this has happened from in this sequence from point A to point B. But as soon as they start injecting adjectives into the story, you damn well know
Yeah.
there's something up. It
Listen,
raises suspicion.
this is like, a shooting or whatever. It's the same thing, right? If something of that sort had any organic reality, let's put it like that, the last thing you would get would be details and adjectives from media, right? For the simple reason that it would ruin the investigation, right? So if something really serious was going on, right, you would want all the details by the end of the day exposed to the four corners of the world. You would want your investigation team to go in, talk to all the people, assess all the facts, realize what actually went on, and get to a conclusion. Right? It's the same as a trial or a an investigation of a shooting or a murder or whatever it was. Right? You don't see the witnesses talking on TV immediately. You don't. Maybe years later, maybe, and not even then, and not
Well,
even then.
it also destroys the integrity of the case in a real life scenario. And
Of
moreover, as
course,
well,
of
I'm
course.
actually very surprised, on a sort of comedic note, I'm very surprised they've not mentioned the motive of the hantavirus yet. I'm
Mhm.
very, very surprised at that.
I'm
And
sure
I'm
it was
also,
a rat dropping soup someone ate,
yes,
maybe in North Korea or something like that.
yes, yeah. I'm surprised the ISIS have not claimed, responsibility for it, or what have you, or the hantavirus has not pledged allegiance to Hamas or something. It's very surprising. But hey ho, there you go. But
Yeah.
um, I'm just trying to see if I actually covered this scene specifically in my notes, but
Yeah,
no,
let's
not
move on
really.
with
Yeah,
yeah,
we'll move on with that
yeah.
if I can find. Here we go. So, there's something I want to mention on this, and there's a sort of esoteric sort of symbolism, a line on this, which is that the nebula that you're seeing at the back there is the Helix Nebula NGC 7293. It's typical visual signatures, which demarcates it and differentiates it, is this sort of deep blue central cavity surrounded by a radiant eye-like ring of orange and red gas. Uh, so it's a direct match to that. This was also picked up ostensibly by the Hubble Space Telescope. It was nicknamed the Eye of God. That's the moniker that it went by. So by placing
Left,
that, yeah,
the
jump
left
in.
or the right eye?
Oh well, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. It looks perhaps like
God's
the left
third
or
eye.
right eye.
God's third
The
eye. Yeah.
God's third eye. Yeah. But I state here by placing this specific cosmic structure at the exact termination point of this sort of awakening of the primal fire, there's a sort of profound eschatological statement that's being made here, right? And this is my take on it, at least looking at it through the lens of the esoteric. So, after the brutal cyclical history of the material world, the blood, the blood moons, the wars, the sacrificial harvests, the artificial demolition, and the collapse of the various earthly temples, it has culminated under the unblinking gaze of the supreme architect. So, this is what this sort of denotes. It is the ultimate manifestation of the all seeing eye, but positioned not as a terrestrial control mechanism or a symbolic aperture, but as a sort of true cosmic source. And you also see, as I've stated there, the breaking of the four screens of. So again, it's this sort of control of the three-dimensional space.
Mhm.
Um, the sort of the three-dimensional axes that we're aware of. It's breaking those down. It's breaking down the four elements as well. All of this four, which is stability. So you're seeing an instability in the system itself, and it's being conjured by what the observer would perceive as, of course, the cosmic source, which is this sort of primal fire. Interestingly, as well, just prior to this, you actually see before he comes, right to the fore of the right to the foreground of the shot. He's this sort of silhouette of fire, which is almost evokes this notion that you see in the book of Ezekiel of Yahweh encased in fire himself. So again, this could mean a number of things. The
Yes,
first one, yeah,
if he
jump
is
in.
God, and if I am right, and say that he is AI, God will manifest through AI to regulate the world and save. Because that is the narrative I see here. So yes, of course, he would be, he's a Jesus of fire. I mean, is there any more, obvious implication, right, than that, right? Jesus, which you don't even know how Jesus looked like, if it was an historical figure. There's no drawing from supposedly the time. There's no description. There's no physical description in that sense. So how do you know how Jesus looks like? You
Yeah,
know because of supposed Renaissance paintings, right? That were done supposedly many centuries later, based on who the model was. Some people say it was the Medici guy or whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? But anyway, this figure was immortalized as the figure of Jesus. That's why we can look at it, long hair, the beard like that, the goatee, and it's Jesus. And of course, the sort of silhouette of him. and of course the crown of thorns, which aren't thorns but barbed wire in this particular case. But you identify at your mind, okay, Jesus, right? And then, of course, the fire. Yes, the fire of God. Yes. But I still think that this is, it's not really at all, and neither did the author intend to bring about some esoteric, deeper symbolism. No, he was depicting a narrative, whether a narrative that he stumbled upon, which I could give that, okay, or a narrative that he was placed to convey, exactly to for people to connect the dots.
Do you know what's very
Hmm.
just bringing bringing up
Sure.
this idea again of not it's not necessarily just the historicity of Christ, but since you've brought it up,
Hmm.
and you know we've been talking about propaganda and this idea that by people's perception, the again almost hyperstitional, the lie is sort of it has life breathed into it, a bit like the fire that you're seeing being breathed here, right? The fire is almost the drama of it all, right? If you look at, I'll get on to the historicity of Christ in a minute, but the fire itself, human beings love to watch fire. And I've always wondered about this. Why do we enjoy watching fire? Even today, we enjoy
Mhm.
watching, you know, the light show on the screen. But why? Why? Well, the fire itself is almost the framing of an artificial sun. It is the Promethean fire.
Hmm.
It is this sort of the artificial light in the darkness at the dead of night, ancestrally, where there would have been no light at all. You would have seen everything, you know, the grandiose tapestry of the night sky, and you would have been in a void, except for this fire, this Promethean fire, which human beings had managed to cultivate by their own sort of trial and error and their own ingenuity. And they
Mhm.
watched it and they watched it intently. And I think the reason for that is because there's an innate desire in humankind. Eve, they don't want the void. They don't want nothingness. They want the drama. And the fire itself is literally the elemental epitome of drama and friction. It's born of friction. And
Right.
so, therefore, um, by watching the sort of coital entwining of the flame with the other flame, you know, this sort of violent ballet, they become almost entranced by it. And I think pretty much propaganda is based upon that, is based from that sort of Promethean fire.
Absolutely.
Um, and I think as well, this is what the fire is representing here. It's not a primal fire. We believe it to be primal, but what it in fact may be is like what you're saying. It's this sort of because it's fire. It's an artificial sun, right? It's something that again it's a Promethean fire. It's technological in a way. So this could tie in as well with your sort of AI interpretation of this too, right? The fire itself is designed to entrance us
Yes,
because of the violence of it all.
and the more you focus on the fire, the less you see of your environment. Like you said, if you focus on the fire, you don't see the canopy of stars, right? So the more you see the fire, the more you want to see the fire, let's say, the less you see of your environment. And of course, if you know, we are automatically and instinctively drawn to, you know, a big alteration in our environment. So if there's a bright light in a dark setting, you are going to be attracted to it, just like a moth, right? I'm not saying human beings are moths, but in that sense, you know, it attracts your view, right? We are instinctually, um, you know, uh, beings that detect difference, right? And that is most different when there's the more contrast it is. But the issue here is if we focus on it just instinctually, we miss out on the rest, right? And illusionism is all based on directing attention away from what you don't want and into the, you know, let's say dangling carrot that you want to be seen. So just to complete that that thought there.
Yes, And also as well, just as a further extension to that, fire is effectively the epitome of power. We watched, or perhaps some of us watched the fire so intently, we began to sort of philosophize about it as we're doing right now. And eventually, those people that philosophized about it eventually became the fire. Some of them became the fumes of the fire, the exhaust of the fire. The ones who were controlled or emitted by the fire itself, right? That, of course, in the and a sort of allegorical connection between the fire and power would mean that these fumes are the masses themselves. These are the sort of bottom of the rung of the funnel effect, or the pyramidal effect of hierarchy. But the fire as power, again, what does power do? Power regulates your ability to feel comfortable, right? So if you don't do as power demands, then eventually, of course, you will be denied all access to comfortability or basic amenities or what have you, right? Your hierarchy of needs will not be met. So the same thing is true with the fire. The fire is almost interestingly exploiting our our inability to feel warmth during the dead of night. So therefore, in probably times gone by, we would have all huddled up together in sort of into communities, right, and kept warm, you know, in a cave or something like that, with birch branches, whatever it may be, right, that we
Hmm.
had covering us, even turf, I can imagine as well. So that all went. That fire itself was the first part of the destruction of the community spirit in that sense, because it allowed us to individually contemplate upon, or interface with our own technology, our own techne.
Yeah, but let me
Yeah.
bring something up, and that's something to the discussion, which is actually a subtraction, not an addition. Which is, even the idea of a primitive man, which is basically a man before technology. That is also an idea. Do we know for a fact? We imagine so, because it seems reasonable and rational to us that there was an evolution in technology. But do we know for a fact that man was ever primitive? What if we are the primitives in that sense? Because I mean, intellectually, we certainly are more primitive than even our grandparents, right? And they didn't have access to all the things we do. And I'm talking generally, right? Um, and how do we know? Why do we assume that there was a primitive state? Like you say, oh, we were covering ourselves in, uh, whatever. You said straw or something like that, right? How do we know that? How do we know that the first thing that men did when, appeared in reality, whatever reality is, I'm not speculating now what it is or what isn't, but the first thing that men did was they knew instinctively how to make fire, how to make technology, how to make clothing, how to make,
Oh no,
why do we have that primitive idea? Because that is part of
yes.
evolution, it's
Well,
inculcated. Yeah.
there's also another problem with the whole thing, which is that man himself appears to be the only, or at least one of the only animals on this planet, or plane, that appears to. He doesn't appear very well adapted to his own environment. We have no natural defense mechanisms, of course, as
Right.
well. Once the dead of night comes, even in equatorial regions,
Mhm.
you will die of hypothermia if you
Mhm.
don't have a fire. So it's rather, it's how did this come about? Perhaps, yeah, we were simply just flung into these mechanisms, or machinic uh, um, models of civilization. Perhaps there was no primitive, um, sort of like what you say, evolution, or a sort of trajectory upwards in terms of technological development. from fire. But I, by that, what I mean is, for example, the first thing I do if I'm out camping or what have you is almost instinctively you just want to make fire. In fact, you have to make fire. If you don't make fire, you're going to be, as we say in Scotland, freezing your bollocks off. So
Right.
and that's no fun. But no, absolutely, you're correct. But I think there is an inclination in man. Again, I don't know if this is instinctual, but there's an inclination of some, in our sort of contemporary understanding of man, that he wants to make fire. So there's like some sort of deep-seated psychological reasoning behind. There must be behind it, and that must inform how we treat our environment and perhaps how we treat ourselves. And yeah, I think in a way the connection between fire and power is pretty.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, I think it's fairly
I agree.
concrete.
That's why the mythology says that Prometheus stole the fire, and by stealing the fire, he stole the power. So yes, I agree that connection with between fire and power is absolutely there. It's a deeply ingrained concept, let's say, or connection, if you like. Yeah.
I also want to speak on a bit of a polemic issue, which is that to get back to this idea of the historicity of Jesus,
Hmm.
of in terms of historical periods of time, the sort of official narrative, in terms of what in terms of the records that we have, the first century AD has to be one of the most documented periods of antiquity. Yet, bar Flavius Josephus and of course the Gospel accounts, which we have to assume they're contemporaneous and they weren't altered or what have you, which they most likely were. We have a lot of evidence to suggest that.
Even the rest of the records.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. So we only have Flavius Josephus, who was a Jewish historian, who, by the way, was most likely a fifth columnist in Rome itself. So he would have had a, I mean, a sort of he would have been incentivized, should we say, to have created the myth of Christ, primarily because fundamentally it started the sort of ball rolling of, I guess you would call it the Abrahamization of Europe, and the centralization of European folk culture under this banner of really what was a sort of Levantine or Middle Eastern view of the world, and a view, of course, of even the esoteric and exoteric ideas that surround us, right? So that's the only individual I can think of. And then in the 2nd century AD, you have people like Tacitus. There was another one, Pliny the Younger, Suetonius, and there's one more, and I don't have the notes for it right now, but there's certainly one more, and they were writing in the 2nd century. So this is almost 80 or 90 years after, supposedly, Christ has died, right? What was it, 33 AD? Rather interesting number. Was it something like that? I think it was 33 AD,
Yeah. So
the estimate, yeah.
assuming the historicity, just for the sake of argument, assuming the historicity of the Jesus character, what you're saying is that if 100 years from now, there's a historian that will say, that will know all about Silas, and will describe Silas and, what he did and all the miracles and, uh, how he was, the personality, what he said, right? 100 years from now.
Yes, that I took one pot noodle and I managed to divide it between 5,000 hungry people.
Deep
Yeah,
fried, though. Deep fried. Yeah.
deep fried. Yes, yes. I took one deep fried Mars bar and I divided it in such a way
Yeah.
that yes, and also I took water and I turned it into Ribena. Things like that. It's just, I mean, the
Yeah.
thing is, on that one alone, we actually have interestingly, I forget the individual's name now, but I think he was a 3rd or 2nd century BC. It might have even been 1st century BC. I think he was Greek, and he he wrote several books, and one of these books sort of intimated how you could carry out this magic trick. At least the one regarding turning the water into wine, and it was to do with effectively hidden chambers within the dispenser, and yeah, so it gave the illusion that, of course, you were changing water into wine. You've got all of these little things, and of course, every prophet has one to sort of. It's their marketing. It's marketing. That's what they're doing. They're trying to market to you, so you suspend your disbelief that he who appears to be a mere man, that defecates, urinates, that bleeds red blood, that eats gluttonously, that has to maintain his needs constantly or he will die, that he is God, or he is the intercessor, or the mouthpiece of God.
Yes, you have just with that described what people do to government. And I'm saying government as a world entity, not as this government or that government, because they're all one government for a long time. And you've just described it, It's giving power and magic and faculties or whatever that you project onto them. So of course that these, and I'm not just, going after Jesus or whatever. No, any such prophets, any such, sage men that generated religions, either they're not historical at all and just, created as a sort of composite archetypal figure, or if they had any historicity, they were projected onto, and made into more than they were. Yes.
The character itself, I mean, with Jesus Christ, the character is most likely a composite. At the time, again, according to official history, there was about 150 or so very popular messianic claimants. There was probably more. These are the most popular. One was called Judas Christos, interestingly, right? Now,
those were the prototypes. The prototypes. They were
those were
just
the prototypes,
fine-tuning the.
But so he was called Judas the Galilean. He was actually not a prince of peace per se. Again, this is from recollection. I think he was in 6 AD. He was crucified because he led an armed revolt or something against the census taking and taxation. Again, that makes sense because the Roman Empire would only crucify you if, and by the way, only the Roman Empire could do this. They would crucify you if you had committed crimes against the state itself, not against the vassal state, but against the Roman state. So you had to be a rebel to be crucified. This doesn't make sense for Jesus Christ. It doesn't even make sense for the other two that stood beside him, Barabbas and I forget the other one. So what it's indicating to you is it's basically a game of Chinese whispers, and they've effectively created they've taken probably Judas Christos plus a couple of other characters at that time. Dionysus as well. Oh yeah, oh absolutely. Dionysus and if you look at the connections between Dionysus and even Attis is another one very similar to Dionysus, and you look at the connections with Jesus Christ, it is utterly bewildering. I mean, one-to-one comparisons. Another one, by the way, is Krishna. It's if I forget now I've got notes on this, but there's one story. It's not a parable, but it's a story of Christ when he was I think it was, I forget the woman now, but she poured basically massage oils and perfumed oils over Christ,
Yes.
and of course,
Mary Magdalene. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway,
Mhm.
that is almost verbatim to a. I mean by verbatim, I mean it is verbatim to a Krishna story of which he goes through a similar thing. You know, where he's anointed in oil and all of this. Um. So I mean, these things are basically just reused, rehashed archetypes, and I mean, you know it's a lie. And I know this is polemical, and I know a lot of people probably turn it off at this point because, again, they're living the lie and they need the lie, just like the actor needs the role. It's like
And
that one.
threaten us with
I was
unsubscribing,
just
which is
I,
the worst thing that could happen.
I was just about to
You know,
bring up that comment.
of all the fates that one could envision, you know, as the worst, unsubscribing is really, I mean, the bottom of the pit. Yeah.
No pun intended. The bottom of the bottomless fiery pit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So to provide the audience with context for this, I mean, an utterly bewildering comment. Again, not I don't think from a regular, but they stated that basically we need Jesus. Y'all need Jesus, uh, so on and so forth, and that you will don't say sorry to us or to me. Referring the commenter is referring to himself. Don't say sorry to me. Say sorry and repent to God, or otherwise, basically, you'll burn in hell, right?
Well,
And I'm unsubscribing. Yeah.
there is a perspective there. You know, the Californians in particular do need Jesus. You know, there are a lot of Mexican immigrants named Jesus, and sometimes they have to take the jobs that the locals don't want. So yeah, they do need Jesus, and they should praise Jesus for the good work that they do to you know, keep the things going there.
Yes, yes. All praise Jesus. Yeah, but I mean, you know it's a lie at that point when they're effectively threatening you with eternal torture and damnation of your soul. And see, it's playing upon the fear, the ultimate fear, which of course all fears are based around unknowns and ignorance.
Mm.
And one will always be ignorant, or of course it will be always unknown to them. It will always elude them the
But
truth of death, you know.
Silas, there's a backdrop assumption in that threat, let's say, of threatening with hell or whatever. And the backdrop assumption is that the receiver of the threat has the same childlike mind that they do, because they believe in, you know, this fantasy. And when I say fantasy, I am not going after the religion per se, but the fantasy of a hell, you know, as depicted with the lake of fire and you know, all those paintings that we've seen across our lives, right? And it's the same thing as, you know, seeing a Spider-Man or a Superman comic book and saying, "Oh, you see you know, this frame here. I don't know what it's called, a strip. You see this strip here. This is what could happen if you don't believe Superman." Right? It's the same thing, but the backdrop assumption is that the mentality receiving has the same childlike gullibility that they themselves took it upon themselves. And listen, I am not saying that this person is, you know, incapable intellectually or is stupid, or
Oh
I'm not
no.
saying that. What I am saying is that they are performing a role that is childlike. And as soon as, you know, if there's any hint inside of themselves that would point to, well, maybe, maybe I am playing a role that is a bit, you know, against my own interests, that will immediately be, you know, Satan's influence, because that's written in,
But but
right?
I'll also say as well, I think, and I say this respectfully, you're viewing it from an individual point of view, which is that
Yeah.
it's not just Satan. They don't. It's not the fear itself. Again, see when you're speaking about I can imagine they say Geol, so they're certainly not from Glasgow or down in the West Midlands or something, right? So they're from the US, probably
If
part
they
of the
were from
Bible Belt.
Glasgow, it would be you cunts or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Better repent, you cunts. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but no, it's if they're from the Bible Belt, probably if they're in a small town,
Mm.
perhaps, or if they're in a small community, perhaps a closely tight knit family, all of their family, all of their community believe in
Share
this
the
lie.
same. Yes.
They
Yes.
share the same. It's not even that they share the same sort of faith. They share the same specific, particularized interpretation of the book and of the faith.
Hmm.
So even if you go out with it, I've seen it before. People have said, "You're Gnostic. You're heaping up judgment against yourself, right?" And I mean, it's totally insane. If you study the Bible for even the history of the Bible, the history of the New Testament, that is, and even the Old Testament of the Septuagint, you start to begin to realize that Christianity actually was formed out of, or at least, the sort of nascent stages of it was formed out of the Essenes, which was itself, I mean, for all intent and purposes, a Gnostic faith. It was a
Hmm.
Gnostic interpretation of things. You even see the small fragmentary residue of this in the New Testament itself. For example, forget the chapter and verse now, but one comes to mind, which is that the Son is the image of the invisible God. So, of course, if I take an image of a panda, this is just one example, that image is not, that photograph that is then developed from it, the image is not the panda itself, right? But Christianity itself would say, no, no, that photograph is the panda. So this is basically
And
what you're
and
dealing with.
therefore, what you see on the screen is the real thing too.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
remember as well, with the modern sort of Trinity movement, or the Trinitarian movement rather, um, which has come to encompass all of Christianity. I mean, it wasn't always the case, but has now come to encompass all of Christianity. And what this is effectively stating is that, yes, the image, what you're seeing, the image that we project to you is real, right?
Yeah.
It is God. It's not just the image of God or the Son of God, it is God. And moreover, as well, the do not engage your mind, do not engage your critical faculties, because that's of Satan. Those are the two primary commandments of any modern day Christian church, be it whatever denomination. I mean, there are a few denominations out there that are fringe, which understand that the Trinity, for example, the Trinitarian doctrine, is complete, is bogus. And
Yes.
then more of, sorry, jump
Sorry.
in.
Well, I was just going to say, and then we go back to that point, which is okay, God, yeah, all right, let's assume God as an entity, as described, okay. God creates everything, including man with intellect. But then, yeah, well, but only use the intellect that way, not this way. And then, of course, the obvious question is, but why then did you create with the ability to use the intellect that way if you only wanted this way? I mean, you're the creator, right? You could have created it with, certain, let's say, guardrails or whatever. Oh, because I wanted them with free will. Well, free will implies that they don't always do what you want, right? So
Yes. My,
it's
my,
ridiculous. You either want robots because the
my
sorry,
Sorry,
sorry.
sorry, no, please finish your point. I interjected.
No, you go ahead. I think you know where I was going, right?
Oh no,
You
I
either
know
want
exactly where you're
robots
going.
or yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you want robots, or you want do you want robots, or do you want people with the act in a manner that is pluripotent and cannot be predicted, right?
Right.
And what's interesting, I mean, this is actually where Gnosticism probably stems from, at least Gnostic Christianity. I'm not talking about Gnosticism in general,
Hmm.
because the Gnostic
It's not a
term itself,
unified. Yeah, yeah.
exactly, it's not unified. It's really just a sort of descriptor of a multitude of various ideas. Anyway, Gnostic Christianity, as we would know it in the modern day, this is where it was born out of. It was people that actually sat down and read the New Testament, at least whatever the New Testament was back then. we're talking about, the first, second, third century AD, right? And a lot of gospels were actually written by these individuals themselves. That was a sort of tradition in
Yeah.
Gnostic Christianity or early Christianity. But for example, in Genesis, after, of course, Adam and Eve eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and of course they realize they're aware of their own nakedness, and of course they put on the fig leaves and so on and so forth. And Adam is hiding behind a tree. Well, the great, supposedly omniscient, all-knowing
Asks where they are.
Yahweh Elohim shouts out,
No,
Adam, Adam, where are you?
but
It's
he
so
asked. He
ridiculous.
asked. It was a rhetorical question. Of course, he knew where he was. It was just, he was going along. Just like when your mother would say your full name when you were in trouble. I think it was the same thing.
All right, yes, yes, yes. Well, that's
Silas
one way of explaining
Josephus. Silas Josephus. Did you eat the last cookie?
it.
Where are you? Knowing full well that you're hidden, under
But
the
this
table or
shows
something.
again the sort of puerility of it all, this juvenile aspect
Exactly.
to it all,
Exactly.
that we're all
That's what I've
born
been
of
saying.
juveniles.
Yeah.
It's very silly. But um, yeah. So I think we've pretty much covered that. I know what we've just stated there may not have appeared to be, of what we're seeing this scene here, but it in fact is completely indicative of it all. It's especially if the
Ah,
framing.
yeah. Yeah, because it's the if you see the figure of Jesus here, the interpretation of what you're seeing is of the utmost importance.
Mhm.
And of course, we may be wrong, right? And you may see it differently. You, the listener, may see it differently, and to you, it's actually Jesus, or it's some other thing. It's the higher essence. It's the whatever, right? I'm not disputing other people's, views on whatever. But being here, I can only speak my piece, right, and what I see. And so it is to me of the utmost importance when I see this that although the figure Jesus is recognizable because of all the pop culture surrounding it, because again, I say there's not the Bible isn't a picture book. Um, well, some Bibles were, right? But they were nonetheless colored many, many centuries later, supposedly. Um, the fact that it's recognizable doesn't mean that it's a substance that it is actually representing something historical or literal in that sense. And I think here that the symbology is to equate the emergence of that something that comes off the rectangles, like we saw the tunnel of rectangles of the probably the screen, right? Probably the worldview as the new savior. So to me, whatever your interpretation of it is, I'm fine with it. I honestly am okay. But I'm the one here, so I must only speak my opinion on it. And Silas the same. And of course, if Silas was to disagree with me, I would be fine either. It's not like, oh, you don't agree with me, you're going to hell, you're not my friend. So
Uh, well, yeah, yeah, exactly. And of course, remember these things are blank canvases. It's similar,
yeah.
of course, to, I mean, even Christ mentioned, I think, at least three times that I can recall. I know one occurs in the book, the Gospel of uh, Mark. I think it also occurs in Matthew as well. And there's another gospel. I forget or maybe it's another point in time in Matthew. But he basically states that children can't eat meat. So you have to provide, and of course, this is all metaphorical, you have to
Mhm.
provide them milk, basically non solid food. Again, this will tie into what we're seeing with the water, right? The traveling through the watery illusion of it all.
Mhm.
Milk, in a way, is similar in scope to this. This ties back into, of course, cross cultural motifs of the symbolism of milk, which is, yes, it, of course, is symbolic of the waters, perhaps of the mother, right? Almost certainly of the mother. I mean, it's milk.
Mhm.
but it's also associated with this sort of nurturing of the embryo
Right.
through narrative, through something that they can, of course, take and they can sort of grasp and they can use and digest. And he states this. He states this quite emphatically, effectively. Everything that you're reading here, I'm stating it in parable. But yet, still, people just completely skip over that, la-di-da-di-da, and they say, well, we have to interpret all of this literally. So it's the same with symbolism. Symbolism isn't meant to be taken literally. I mean, if you were to take this thing literally, what the apocalypse is going to be, that everything freezes over, it all starts collapsing. We have this weird blue dude that changes his masks and does crazy dances, and then of course, Christ appears and
And we
goes across
see
the water.
Osama in an icy waste, doing his thing.
Exactly.
So yeah, Osama
Yes,
bin
yeah.
Laden.
So exactly, yeah. I mean,
It's symbolic, of course.
it's
It's
symbolic, of
symbolic
course.
of a narrative, and this is what I'm trying to say. It's not symbolic of something real.
Exactly, yeah.
This is what I am trying to convey. Whether you agree or other people agree, that's beside the point. But what I am trying to convey, it's that it's symbolic, not for something real, but symbolic of what is intended narratively, of towards a belief of what is happening or what is going to happen.
But the
Yeah.
way the way that symbolism is set up, and this is why it's so potent.
Mhm.
And of course, parables and metaphors are basically textual symbolism, is because firstly, what it's doing is it's communicating with the primordial essence of the thought before it
Right.
goes through, like what you're
Right.
saying, the frames of the psyche, and
Right.
so it's touching the human being at a very, very primal level and a very
Mm.
psychologically compatible level. You could even say biocompatible compatible level. So this is the idea of biopower or biomass, and this is how they generate engagement, because what they're seeking
Yeah.
to do is almost to not necessarily reinforce, but they're attempting to structure the terrain of your mind into an architecture that they can manipulate and control,
Yes.
again, like a puppet.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
things that you're seeing with the symbolism, and this is why it's so potent, is because, like Disneyland, there's fun for all the family. You can pick anything out of this. Literally, it becomes the canvas of your mind, of the deeper subconscious aspects of your mind. But because the symbolism itself is based upon psychologically compatible archetypes that appear to be
Yes.
primal and ancient, it can make you
They're
feel as though you've
legitimized. Yes.
exactly make you
Yes.
feel as though you've reached these things of your own accord, which of course
Yes.
you have not.
And each and every individual, uh, emerges in the world with a filter built in. That filter, I call it ego, for a good reason. I call it ego because ego is exactly the word, the concept that is attacked as, evil, be it in psychology, be it in religion, be it in New Age, be it in Buddhism, whatever, right? And, as you know, I've written a book about it. And that is actually the filter. That is actually the filter that is able to discern what you just said, right? Each and every one of us comes with it. But we are taught that this filter, that this, let's say, intermediate between the mind of the mind character, the pure rational slash emotional being, and the, let's say, higher essential consciousness, there is an in between. And that in between, I call it ego for good reason, because I think that that is the same ego that is demonized, that is, taken as the root of all the problems of humanity. No, the root of all the problems of humanity is not using the ego, is not listening to the ego, because the ego can oversee much more than the mind can, much more than the emotions can, and the essence can't touch this world, right? By its very nature, it can't be here. If it's essential, it can't be manifest. If it's potential, it can't be manifest. So it can't do anything for you. The ego can, right? Because the ego is in between the worlds, let's say. Let's call it symbolically. Okay, I'm talking symbolically here. The ego is in between the higher consciousness, the pure consciousness of potential, like you say, pure potential, undifferentiated, and you say another thing, and the manifested world, right? So the ego is in between the two. And it's the first layer of individuality, and we all come with it. We are not born automatically with mind characters. Those are generated later in the final gestation periods of life, which happen already outside the body, in my opinion. I think we are born not fully formed, and therefore, the gestation happens outside the body. The mind character comes later, but the ego is there as we are born, as we are formed.
This is the Noah's. Sorry to interject where you finished
No,
your
go ahead.
point.
Yeah. Of course.
This is effectively the ego is the vessel. It is the boat with the rudder. And if you don't have the ego, effectively what occurs is that you become the fool. You fall from the precipice, staring at the sky or the sun, unaware of all, believing that you've found God. But in fact, what you've just found is sort of, well, if you stare at the sun, you find blindness, right? So you believe your own blindness to be enlightenment. It's a sort of false enlightenment idea. And then, of course, you fall from the precipice. And like Orion, which is the headless, slumbering dreamer, as he's always seen within the esoteric corpus. And again, that's the Silver Gate back to the hantavirus in the Argentum or Argentina.
Mm-hmm.
You fall into the sort of reflected light of the moon. This sort of parsed, filtered light of the sun, the primordial sun, that of the ego or the soul. And again, you're just a castaway. You're being pulled by the currents or the currency of the narratives that are produced by the banks at either side, and they direct this current or currency, this narrative. And so you simply live in the flow of it all. But it's not something you can necessarily navigate because you have no dry platform, which of course the ego would provide you. This is, by the way, back to the Bible and the sort of silliness of all. You've got people running about thinking they've found Noah's Ark, right, on Mount, it's that mountain in Armenia. God, I forget it now.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's mentioned.
Ararat or
Ararat, that's it, yes. And they've said, look, there's this prehistoric, ossified or petrified, wooden ark, right? The Noah's Ark idea, along with all of the other deluge stories, it's not evoking. It most likely is not evoking, at least the way it's written. It's not evoking a natural phenomenon, a sort of terrible force majeure. What it's indicating is that Noah built the ark, brought his family on board, why did he bring the animals on board? Why? Oh, well, it was to repopulate the earth. And no. If he's killing off all of the human beings, why not just reset it all and start again? You also see the same sort of strange peculiarity with the Atrahasis myth, which, of course, the later Hebrew Noah myth in the Old Testament is based upon. Atrahasis is from Acadia and Sumeria. He also, I believe, brings the animals on board. Why? Well, it's because at that point, the civilization had so engorged itself upon techne, perhaps upon, the sort of the myths and the confounding fractured ego that's brought about by all of these narratives, the narrative sink of it all, right? And then Noah is the one who rediscovers his own ego, who goes beyond these myths, who goes beyond, if you will, the wheel of fortune, the homeostatic system of that civilization. The rest are drowned. They're not actually drowned, but they're drowned in the, again, similar to the
sea
drugs.
of irrelevance.
Sea of irrelevance, a sort of vacancy.
Yeah.
And so this is what this is about. And why the animals? Well, the animals, because anima, or animus, That's where animal comes from. Those who have breath, meaning the people or the animals he brought on are the ones who had ego. They were natural. They were not, inundated with the sort of civilized, fractured, fractal narratives that were just, that are used to power and maintain civilizations, and of course to encourage engagement from the populace, the masses. Yeah, that's the myth. That's the
Yeah.
myth. That's what it means. The deluge of water.
Okay, but can you get me a piece of the fossilized ark for me to worship? Or
I was actually thinking starting off.
I heard everything you said, but can I get a piece of the?
Well, the best I can do is a piece of the true cross, or a femur bone of Jesus Christ. There's so many femur bones of Jesus Christ or the apostles. I mean, some of these
Well, I'm not so
apostles.
demanding. A femur bone of one of the martyrs will be okay.
Yeah, well, there's about
That was a
32 of
thing,
them
Yeah,
going
that
about.
was a
So
thing.
yeah. There's
That
about
was a thing.
32 or so. Yeah. Oh, sorry,
You did
jump in.
have that. You did that. You did have that in Scotland. That thing about collecting bones of the saints and.
Oh yeah. Well, when we were still Protestants, yeah. Sorry,
Right.
Catholics. When
Catholics,
we
right.
became Protestants, that sort of
That all went. Yeah.
that all went. Yeah, but yeah. I mean, you can look in medieval Europe.
Hmm.
You had so many femur bones or rib bones of saints that, I mean, these saints must have been grotesque mutant creatures.
Yeah.
They had like 100 rib bones and 32 femur bones, and I mean,
Hence the spider aliens.
yes,
There you
they were
go.
all Ungolans.
I've just connected a dot here, or two dots,
Or
and made up
32.
and made up a new thing. See, this is how it happens. This is how
Exactly.
it happens. But I'm kidding, of course. But this is how it happens. We see two dots and then we connect them. We come up with something new and we contribute, and we add to the fantasy. So
Yeah.
if there were so many femur bones of saint, and they had to have therefore, because we take them all as real, we had to have therefore several legs. That's what the spider aliens are for. So the saints were actually spider aliens. There you go.
There you go. They caught us all in their web. But there's a few other things we can mention on the esoteric idea. You
Yes,
can also
please.
see the light of that sort of pupil of the God's Eye nebula. You'll see that it's almost being projected through the throat or the larynx, the vocal cords. If you look at the vocal cords, they're in an upside down triangle, which is interesting. Of course, that denotes the feminine or receptive principle. It also denotes a sort of channeling down, which is similar to the symbol of the chevron, as you see on coats of arms too. So it's almost evoking the logos, right? Again, back to Christ. But the logos itself is the synthesis of the thesis and antithesis. So, for example, in the Egyptian triad, it would be Osiris, Isis, and then Horus. So Horus is the eternal child. The eternal child, if you were to look at it purely as a sort of socio-political phenomenon, that is basically you will have two resets within any epoch. You'll have the deluge of water, which we've discussed the symbolism of that, and then the deluge of fire, which is like what you stated, it's the self-inflicted wound, which is designed to create a lacuna, a negative space, from which a sort of a rebirth or a renaissance, exactly, a new Atlantis can emerge. So you have this idea. You'll notice as well, it's almost like it's the final frame that we're seeing here that he's almost confined by is the frame that we are looking through. It's that's pretty interesting. I mean, you could probably make a lot of inferences from that, but you'll also notice as well his head is to the left, so it's of judgment. It's of this sort of Binar Gavura aspect. It's of the Boaz aspect, which is effectively jump in.
Sorry, I was just chuckling because it just occurred to me that he's in the position that was immortalized by the parody of supposed Charlie Kirk falling off his chair when he was shot.
Oh, wow. Damn.
He
Very
fell exactly
interesting.
like that, didn't
And
he?
he
He
was
even raised
shot.
his arm. He even raised his arm. The right arm was raised more or
Yeah.
less like that, and the other one was more or less like that.
Well, that ties
And
in with
then
the
he,
Logos as well. Remember, he was shot
yes,
in the larynx or the throat, which is
yes,
exactly where you
yes,
see
yes,
this light.
yes.
Wow. Damn, that's a very good eye. I didn't even make that connection. That's impressive, Armin.
I'm
That's
connecting the dots, man. I'm creating history here. I'm on a
no,
roll.
but just
Armun the
on,
historian.
but so in terms of alchemy, we can also say it's the liberated pneuma, which is the breath in
Yeah.
Greek. So the divine consciousness of, or the awakened logos, as we've stated, that has survived the alchemical nigredo destruction and ablutio, which is purification. That is only extant within Basil Valentinus's work. If you look at the mainstay stages of the magnum opus, there are only four. So Negredo and Ablutio would be one and the same within those four stages. But in Basil Valentinus's work, they're not. So having navigated the underworld and witnessed the destruction of the old Aeon, this spark is now actively exiting the cosmic carousel, or he's going through the throes of awakening, one or the two. So there's a sort of tikkun, a repair or a rectification going on. You also see this, pardon me, with the eye of God. This is also the liberate in Kabbalah. It would be because it's the eye of God here. This nebula, it's the liberated soul achieving theosis or unification with the Ein or the Ein Sof, becoming basically a child of the void. You could look at it that way, or of course, becoming one with God Himself, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As they would state. Uh, there's also, I don't know if you want to go to the next scene. If you are you, how
Well,
are you on time?
we're around the 2 hour mark. I think it was not even 5 seconds this time. I think
No, it
we're
wasn't.
well on our way to the 666 episodes that we planned. But yes, I am sorry for my rants. I apologize to all the listeners and to you, Silas, for my rants that prevent us. I know that I'm responsible, at least partially, for getting stuck on a scene for 2 hours. But well, better that than just moving along just for the sake of moving along, I suppose.
No, no, it's actually quite important because see what it's showing is something I'm trying to communicate through this idea of the ARG, which is
Mm,
everything you're seeing here, and like the guy commented, I think his name is Hero of Old. Um, don't take this as literal. Do not look at this literally. Even when I'm speaking about the whole plasma thing,
mhm.
those aren't literal.
Yeah,
Those are models of speculative explication. All we can know is effectively how tangibly power operates, or at least logically how it would operate if we can put ourselves into their shoes, right?
yeah,
Beyond that, everything else is a model of explication. It itself is a narrative, right? Do not sink yourself, do not sink any emotionality into the narratives. Even what we're discussing here within these series,
yeah,
I'm just providing people with, because I've read a fair amount of books on the esoteric, and I've sort of thought upon the occult sciences a fair bit. I'm just providing you what I know regarding them. I'm not saying what they state in these books and their interpretations of these symbols are correct. I'm sort of just showing you the dots. But like what you're saying, we shouldn't necessarily join them. Joining
yes,
them meaning we take the point and we turn it into a thought and into a filtered thought, and then of
right,
course that gets construed into the IAO, right? We take that line, that thought, and we construe it into the triangle, which is the prism of the idea, and then that itself gets um, refracted out into the circle, into the loop. So you become epistemically imprisoned by the
yeah,
the wheel of fortune, the loop. Do not do that. That's
Yes.
that's how religions will control you. It's how ideologies will control you, even if the ideologies themselves are self-assembled from it will still have the same effect upon you,
Yeah.
you know. So don't do that.
I entirely agree, and I agree with that comment that you said about not taking things literally, um, because it is at that point that we make the stories our own and start contributing to them, right? And when I say contributing, is both, in a rational manner, like in the sense of, oh, I've connected this dot with the other one, so a third thing emerges from that, a third extrapolation emerges from that, as if there was any reality to the speculation. And another is that we may emotionally get involved. Like you've just stated, I don't remember exactly the term you used, but emotionally involved. You said something like that. But that
Yes,
is
yeah.
that is exactly one of the issues, let's say. Yeah. So I agree. I agree.
And just on a final note, I won't keep you
Hmm.
too long, man, but you'll see here that God, I actually forget the anatomy now, the anatomical term for it, but it's that sort of dangling appendage at the back of one's throat. Uh,
That one. For a moment there, I thought you were talking about something
oh
else.
no, 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 God, oh my God, no. That's in that's in the nether regions. Oh, by the way, the first this reminds me. Sorry, I won't keep you too long, but I'll mention this and I'll
It's all right.
mention the other thing. So you'll notice, right, that so New York, which was called New Amsterdam,
Hmm.
of course, named after the city in the Netherlands. The not the, I don't believe it's the capital, if I recall correctly, but
No,
it's at
no. The
least
capital is The Hague, Den
the
Haag.
Hague. Yes, yes, Den Haag. But it's the financial capital of
Hmm.
old Europe, of the old world, and of course, the new world. The financial capital was New York, the Big Apple, or of
Hmm.
course, the New Amsterdam. The Big Apple, of course, relates to these same ideas, right? Again, another ARG. But the first individual who died, I'm not going to try and pronounce his surname. It's a Dutch surname, and I'll butcher it. And I've got to be honest, I can't even recall how to pronounce it. Um, but his first name was Leo. He was from the Netherlands. Now, in English, nether, I don't know how this is with Dutch itself, but nether means sort of the underworld. It's
Below. Yeah.
below, yes.
Mhm.
So it's the lands below. So this is rather interesting. The man from the lands below goes to the land of the lunar shadow, Argentina, of whom, of course, is entwined with the sun, because the sun is obviously on their flag. And
Mhm.
then he comes back from this land of silver, this land of the moon. He dies. He's carried on the boat, similar to this Christos character.
He was
And
carried for 3 days, was it?
no, he was carried for 13 days.
Ah, damn.
13 days, which is interesting because it ties in with a few bits of ritualism, but obviously it relates back to Ophiuchus, whose real name prior to his catastrophization, meaning prior to him becoming a constellation in the night sky by Zeus flinging the stars up or his body up and immortalizing him, he was called Asclepius.
Yeah.
And Asclepius is, of course, associated with both both venom and the cure. He was, and of course, secrets as well. Again, all of this is very, very, very interesting. Of course, Ophiuchus is the 13th zodiac, the hidden zodiac. It's and that is part of the zodiacal belt. It's the sun passes through Ophiuchus, but because of course, all of our zodiacal systems or astrological systems are based on the Babylonian system, so it could be mathematically precise and sort of equidistant and equal. They simply just reduced it, subtracted the 13th one, and just made it 12.
Mhm.
But you'll notice here as well that the fire or the false logos hits that point. I forget what it's called, Illulia or something like that.
Yeah, I
Anyway,
know what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
and lights it up almost as a lamp. And it's almost what you're seeing here is he's projecting out the new system out of the
Yeah.
mouth.
He will be the
He's
voice. Yes.
bingo, like what you saw with the demiurge.
Mhm.
Everything was from the mouth. In fact, you saw the person was being tormented, and every time the demiurge would come up to the screen, you would see his mouth. So it's all frequency. It's all based upon storytelling. It's all based upon language, which of course is a way to program the mind itself. So this is what it's indicating, like what you were saying with AI. So it could be AI that you're seeing here, or just simply, as I would say in my interpretation, it's the
Mm.
new system coming into being, which is yet another levying of stories and narratives and what have you.
Yeah. Well, in my closing statement, I would just like to say that it's all real. We're not just a series looking into this thing. We're not just headlines. It's all real. That's all I wanted to say. And thank you all for listening and putting up with us and with my humor that sometimes goes all over the place, I know. And I hope you took something useful from it, and hope to see you next time. This was episode 9 of, let's hope 666. I think
Yeah,
it's a good
I
round
think
number.
we're going to
Yeah.
go through a hell of a lot of narratives. We're already at the
A
hantavirus. We might
hell
be at
of a
the
lot of narratives. I see what you did there. I see.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Oh my
Satanist.
god.
You're just a
Yes.
Satanist.
Yes, yes. I'm or I'm like Dante Alighieri. We're stepping out of the pits of hell,
Yeah.
layer by layer. Anyway, man, I thank you very much for the generosity of your time, and this was a great one.
Thank you.
Right, man. Take it easy. Take it easy, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye. See ya.